Ladies and gentlemen, it's been established on this YouTube channel over the last year, maybe 13, 14 months, that there is major resistance starting at around $126,000 right now from this line we see on the screen, which we've actually recently rejected from on the daily candle, going all the way through to something like $134,000, which you can see from this chart here, this logarithmic regression chart. Another chart is the power law chart. There's the resistance in green. Another chart is the 2-week RSI chart. There's the resistance from a triangle, which has been holding for close to 18 months. It doesn't really matter if you haven't seen these charts before. The specifics you can see in my prior videos. The point is there is major resistance, which is independently verifiable, right, between 126 and 132-ish right now, right? And that resistance zone's moving upwards. So in next week, it might be 127 to 133, right? It's moving upwards as time goes on. And this resistance is especially important to watch because as we get towards the end of Bitcoin's regular 4-year cycle, this resistance region could very well mark the top. Now, I've got a big question to answer today, 2 big questions. One of them is, can we break this resistance region, go very much higher on Bitcoin, and top out within the 4-year cycle? Can we have our cake and eat it too? And I think the answer is actually yes, we can, as long as that breakout happens very, very soon. And the second question is in regards to the 4-year cycle. When can we definitively say that the 4-year cycle has ended, right? What constitutes a 4-year cycle break? And that question, there's a little more gray area. And the reason it's more gray area is because there's a very big difference actually between identifying a break of the 4-year cycle, a deviation from the regular 4-year cycle in the same way you deviate from a triangle, and also identifying that the date range trends of the 4-year cycle have been distorted to the point in which our predictive capacity has been diminished, right? So you can see the complexity of this video already just in the introduction. This is a very technical video. Even in question 1 and in question 2, both the answers I give will be quite complicated. So I'll try my best to avoid running into word salads, but just be warned, this is probably one of my more complicated videos in delivery. So before we get into it today, guys, I want to mention 1 or 2 things. One of them is we've got a Q&A video coming tomorrow. So go ahead and drop a question on my YouTube community post page. I've said, ask me a question about the market that you'd like to see answered in an upcoming video. You can drop your question there. I'll answer it tomorrow. And second of all, we have the Bitunix Exchange, which is a global non-KYC exchange with no restrictions based on location. You can sign up from anywhere in the world. It's never been hacked before. Extremely safe exchange, historically speaking, which is what you want really from an exchange and what's very rare to find on an exchange these days. So use my link down below to sign up and you'll get an exclusive 15% trading fee discount attached to your account for life. Let's dive into the content and address that first question mentioned in the introduction. Can we break above this big resistance zone between $126,000 and $131,000 and also maintain the 4-year cycle at the same time? Well, the resistance on this chart here says 126. We're testing it right now as we speak. We look at the hourly chart. That yellow line is the big line that goes back from 2017. We're pressing up against it literally right now. We're also pressing up against the momentum indicator resistance on the 2-week chart triangle literally right now. We are on the verge of cracking into this resistance zone. Now it goes all the way up to something like 131,000, which comes from this chart here and this chart here. We don't need to dive too heavily into those in this video, but just know they do exist. And of course, this entire region at around the $130,000 level is something we've been discussing for a very long period of time and something we've been discussing as a potential top zone on Bitcoin for this cycle for a very long period of time as well. That doesn't mean we'll top there. We can punch through it. And if we punch through it, if we punch through this resistance zone, it kind of tells us one of 2 things are occurring. 1, it could tell us that we are going upwards for much longer on Bitcoin because these resistance levels have existed, no matter what chart you look at, for long periods of time. Since 2017, in this case, on the logarithmic regression channel, on the power law chart, we're talking about since the origin of Bitcoin price action. These are long-term resistance levels that have never been broken, and so breaking them could signify that we're also breaking the structure of the cycle. Alternatively, it could just signify that Bitcoin is doing one more big macro move in a deviation type format above these levels before dropping downwards massively. There's nothing really proving that it has to be one or the other. What I will say is this: we are low on time. Bitcoin's 4-year cycle says that we will be topping, we should be topping according to the 4-year cycle in October or around October. So somewhere any day now, right? We've got very limited amount of time left. I've pretty much always said on this YouTube channel, something like October to maybe early to mid-November. So if anything, we've got a maximum of about 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, but more realistically, we're talking, 2-3 weeks here. This is the range we're working with, not much time at all. And so if we keep mucking around at resistance here and lurking and compressing and consolidating, we will run out of time. And at that point, it becomes more likely that that was the actual cyclical top at this resistance zone. If we break above this resistance right now, we still have, again, potentially 4 weeks, maybe a little bit more to run upwards. That is enough time to see a macro move. We've seen macro moves that last only 4 weeks in the past. We look at this macro move in 2021. Again, it's a different cycle, it's hard to compare, but this move from the January correction of 2021 all the way up to the range that led to the first actual major top in 2021 was only 4 weeks long. 4 weeks is a reasonable amount of time to see significant price action on Bitcoin, especially the way it's been moving this cycle. If you look at the ETF breakout that we saw from the range-bound resistance, it took 3-4 weeks to get up to the next zone in which we started compressing and consolidating from and correcting from ultimately. So if we did break out right here today or tomorrow or the next day or within the next week, let's say, we would hypothetically have time to see another big macro move into proper price discovery above those resistance zones and top out within the 4-year cycle in late October or early November. So holding the 4-year cycle and getting a big move would be seeing the best of both worlds. That is still on the table. But every day that ticks past, that becomes a less likely scenario, because every day that ticks past, we dig deeper towards the cyclical expectation of where the top should be. So if Bitcoin, here's my conclusion to this question, if Bitcoin is going to break upwards, if Bitcoin is going to make another big move to the upside within the 4-year cycle, it has to do it very soon. There's no specific deadline, there's no day particularly, but very, very soon, right? Ideally within the next week. Now, if we start breaking outwards in late October or early November, that to me starts to look more like a break of the cycle itself and a cyclical extension. So that's the difference, right? If we break out early this month, it looks like a potential move within the cycle still and still topping out later in October. If we break out in late October or November, if we correct beforehand, if we waste time here, that to me looks like either a market top or a cyclical extension. So it's a very confusing time to be in the market because we are at such a crucial point of the cycle in which, the cycle is saying, hey guys, we should be looking for a top around here somewhere. And yet we do have a little bit of time left in which we could still see a spark of momentum. And that momentum indicator, the 2-week RSI, is literally right there waiting for that spark to occur. So I'm very hopeful for the next week. I really hope we do see something big because we could maintain our hopes for a regular 4-year cycle top and maintain all of our macro predictability in not breaking the 4-year cycle while also seeing a massive move if we do see this resistance zone break very, very shortly. If it happens later, that question gets a bit more dicey, unfortunately. Now, as for the cycle itself, seeing as we've been talking about the cycle quite a lot, when will the cycle break? And what I mean by that is not when will it break. It's going to break eventually. We don't know when it's going to break. At this point, it's still holding. But if Bitcoin, for example, topped out in December, would that be a break of the 4-year cycle? This is kind of the critical question that a lot of people have been asking me, like at what point would you consider the cycle to be broken? And the answer is it's kind of complicated. It's complicated not because I can't tell you when, but it's complicated because the difference between the cycle breaking and the cycle being deviated from to the point in which the date range trends aren't useful to us anymore is actually in existence. There is a difference there. And the difference is very significant. I don't care about the cycle because the cycle's alive. I care about the cycle because the cycle gives us an actionable date range trend, which we can use to predict tops and bottoms, right? If that date range trend loosens and goes away, the cycle's irrelevant, or at least much less relevant. And so the reason why the 4-year cycle is so powerful and strong is because it can tell us, and it has told us since 2022, that around October 2025 is where the top will be according to the cycle. And it's only been able to do that because the date range trends have been narrowing and becoming more precise over time. Now, look at these date range trends I've got on the left-hand side of the screen, right? One of them is very precise. It's this pink one here. It's the trend that says there's basically exactly 1,064 days. It's something like 1,068 and 1,061, but it's very, very close to 1,064 days between bottoms and tops. if Bitcoin tops out in late November or December or January, that trend gets deleted. That whole pink data point that we have, 1 of 6, gets deleted. Also, the trend that says we have 1,400 days from top to top, well, that gets deviated quite strongly, because instead of seeing 1,400, what we might see is 1,550. And then we have to think, well, okay, the most precise trend we have, which was the 1,064 days trend, is gone. And now the second most precise trend we have has a date range deviation potential of around 130 days. That's 4 months of deviation potential. And so in the next cycle, just by losing that one singular trend, we end up going from being able to tell that Bitcoin will top out within a 3-week period to being able to tell that Bitcoin will top out within a 4-month period, which is much less useful to us. So it's not necessarily about when the cycle will break. It's more to me about when the cycle will lose predictive capacity. And if Bitcoin tops out any later than something like mid-November, we lose. Now, as to when the cycle will actually break, if we topped out in December, would that be a break of the cycle? No, I don't think so. It would be a massive distortion of the current date range trends we have, but the cycle is based on a 4-year time frame. And if we're talking about a 4-year time frame, anything that happens within a period of a couple of months is kind of irrelevant. And especially given the fact we only have 3 completed data points, maybe coming up on 4 completed data points, 3.5 completed data points now, you can't really be judging the validity of the entire trend based on what happens on the 4th data point. That's not enough, right? The fact of the matter is the cycle exists not due to just Bitcoin price action, but it exists due to massive macroeconomic trends that exist in traditional markets, like the presidential cycle, like the 18-year real estate economic cycle that have existed for decades and decades. And so the cycle might not break, it might just become not very useful to us as analysts, right? It wouldn't be our first line of attack as analysts. And that distinction, I think, is very, very important. The cycle is like any other trend. If we have a triangle formation, for example, and within that triangle formation, we see, multiple data points, which are retests of the top and the bottom. So we see 4 kind of retests of the top and the bottom, matching what we have this cycle. And then we break, but it's a deviation. We go back down, we break into the downside. That's kind of similar to what would happen if Bitcoin saw a weird cycle this time and topped out in January. It's like it wouldn't break the cycle in the same way that the triangle's still valid, even though we had the deviation, but it would reduce our predictive capacity of the triangle itself because of the utility of the triangle, because the triangle is not as reliable anymore, right? We can't use it as a front line of attack in our analytics or in our analytical activities. Our activities as analysts. I feel like this video has been exceptionally complicated. I apologize for that. It's highly theoretical. So it kind of, I guess might go above the heads of some people who aren't familiar with the charts I'm talking about. But I feel like it's made a decent amount of sense. I'll give a conclusion here and wrap it up. I'll try to be concise with the conclusion so people who are a bit lost can understand what I'm saying. Okay, first part of the video. Bitcoin is at major resistance now. And if Bitcoin wants to break that major resistance while maintaining the 4-year cycle, it better do it very, very quickly, because the later we dig into the month October, the more it looks like a break of this level would be a break of the cycle itself. Right? We're running out of time here. And as per the second part of the video, when would the 4-year cycle break? Well, that's not an easy question to answer, but what I can answer is the 4-year cycle would start to lose predictive utility to us if the top came anywhere after something like mid-November. We want to be seeing a top for the 4-year cycle to remain perfect between now and early to mid-November, ideally in October. So very big moment for Bitcoin, especially at this resistance zone. Hopefully we break outwards. That would be great to see one more big move on Bitcoin while also maintaining the cycle. And, as we dig further and further into the month, if we haven't broken outwards yet, I would actually be hoping we just top out at this resistance zone, because I actually don't want to be seeing the cycle break. We would lose a lot of data that we can use for predictions in the future if the cycle breaks or deviates. So again, a bit of a complex video. I'll probably go back and add a little note in the introduction that it is a bit theoretical. Hopefully you got something out of it. Let me know what you think down below. And of course, go to that Q&A, post your question in that Q&A. And tomorrow we'll come back, hopefully, with some more concise and simplistic answers in that Q&A video. go ahead and check out the Bitunix Exchange if you're interested. It's a global exchange. It's non-KYC. It's never been hacked before. All of those things are very, very important for exchanges and very rare to find in one singular exchange these days. So this exchange has it, right? There's a reason I picked Bitunix to show on this channel, and that's most of the reason. If you're interested in signing up, my link is down below, and with that link in the description and the pinned comment, you can get a 15% lifetime trading fee discount on every single buy you make on the exchange and every single sell as well. So use that link if you're interested. Appreciate it, guys. Catch you tomorrow.